All right guys, before we get into it, I want to thank you for tuning in. On this channel, I make videos about drones and photography. And don't forget to watch to the very end because I'm doing a free giveaway. And of course, we're all excited about the Mavic 2. So we're going to get into that right now. So DJI just made their big announcement for the Mavic 2. And it's going to be two drones, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom. So in this video, I'm going to first talk about all the similarities between the two drones. And then I'm going to talk about the differences. And at the very end, I'm going to give you my opinion, my feedback, what I recommend for you. Let's start with the design and batteries. They're basically the same drone. They just have different gimbals. So you can swap the batteries, no problem, which is a huge plus. Another similarity is the flight time. They're both going to be able to fly up to 31 minutes, which is an improved 4 minutes over the Pro and a minute over the Platinum. They're also going to be slightly faster than the Pro, so they're going to be able to fly up to 44 miles an hour with a distance of up to 8 kilometers or about 5 miles. Now, obviously this is an ideal situation, but so far those specs look great. One thing to note, it's not just that this drone can go farther, but it also has a different transmission. So it has something called Akka Sync 2.0. So basically it's going to be an improved signal from the Mavic Pro, which used Akka Sync. So this will give you much better transmission, switching from 2.4 to 5.8 frequency. And it will just give you better transmission, especially if you fly in the city or if you fly really far and your signal kind of drops a lot. In this case, it's going to be much improved. So if you're someone who likes to fly really far, this is going to be definitely a really nice added feature. Now, like the Mavic Air, they both have 8 gigs of internal storage. I would have liked to seen a little more because 8 gigs is kind of just a little backup. If you need that money shot, you have 8 gigs, which equates to about 8 to 10 minutes of 4K footage. Might be a little more, but it's not that much. So for any cinematographer out there, you're gonna need a micro SD card. And to be honest, I thought this was kind of a bummer because I would have liked to have seen at least 16 gigs in this drone. Another commonality between these two drones was the fact that they can fly in extreme temperature. So they can fly in really hot weather during the summer in over 100 degrees. And then they can go all the way down to 14 degrees. So that means all you skiers out there, snowboarders, and all the people who like to do extreme sports in cold weather, that means you can use this drone, put on the active track, and it will follow you in those really cold temperatures. And speaking of active track, it's much improved. So this active track is an improved version of the Mavic Air. So on this drone, if we talk about active track, we got to talk about sensors. Both Mavic 2 drones have something called omnidirectional sensors. So what that means is there's going to be sensors on the top of the drone, on the bottom of the drone, in the front, in the back, and also on the sides. One thing to note, only in quick shot mode or the intelligent flight mode will you have the obstacle avoiding sensors on the sides. However, just in normal mode, just flying, you'll still have those obstacle avoidance on the top, the bottom, the front, and the back, which is really nice. Now, one thing I've noticed from using the Phantom 4 Pro is that there are some blind spots. They call it omnidirectional and not 360 degree obstacle avoidance. So that's one thing to note. There's gonna be small blind spots. However, it's gonna be so small that I don't see it being a problem. And these obstacle avoiding sensors are gonna be very helpful when you use the active track. So when you're using active track, it has an improved active track. So not only will it follow you from behind, from the side, from in front, but it's gonna follow you at higher speeds and it's gonna be able to go behind things. So let's say you're driving your car, you drive around a corner, there's a tree or a building in the way, it's going to think, all right, you drove your car around that corner, you're gonna come out on the other side of the road over there. So I'm just gonna go follow you over there, or I might go back to the other side. It's gonna use its own prediction ability, its artificial intelligence to follow you. So if you're a skier or a snowboarder, you can be skiing down the hill and you can go behind a tree or maybe get lost and it's gonna come out and it's gonna be able to follow you. So having this feature is gonna be so desired by so many cinematographers, vloggers, and content creators. Now, what about the video resolution? Well, the video resolution shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second. And for me, This was kind of a bummer. I wish they had 60 frames per second. Now the reason DJI did this, and they're not gonna come out and say it, but I'm gonna say it here. The reason they did it is because if they made it at 4K at 60 frames per second, that means sales would basically go right down the drain for the Phantom 4 Pro, because that can shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second. So they didn't want to make the Phantom 4 Pro obsolete, so they only left it at 4K up to 30 frames per second. However, it still has the same bit rate as the Mavic Air and the Phantom 4 Pro of 100 megabytes per second. So what that means is it can transfer data really fast. So your video quality is going to look tremendous. And also you can shoot 1080 at 120 frames per second. So if you like doing super slow motion in high definition, both of these drones are going to be able to do that. There's some other small similarities that I'm going to mention briefly. So they both have 3-axis gimbal. They both can shoot JPEG or RAW for photos. For video, they both shoot an MOV and an MP4 at a codec of H.264 or H.265. If you don't know what any of that means, don't worry. Just basically leave the way it is by default and it's going to be fine. But for you cinematographers, if you're used to the Mavic Pro, this is not going to be anything different. It's going to be able to fly in winds up to about 25 miles per hour, maybe even a little faster, I suppose. Now, the feature that both of these drones have that I'm most excited about is Hyperlapse. What Hyperlapse is it's time lapse while the drone is moving. So amazingly enough, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom can do hyperlapse 4 different ways. It can do it if you just move the drone normally. It can do hyperlapse while you circle around an object. It can do hyperlapse while you focus on one point and it just goes straight ahead. And it can also do hyperlapse with waypoints. So you put in different points on the map or where you're going, and it will go to those different points automatically while doing the hyperlapse. A nice feature for cinematographers who shoot a lot of 4K is that both of these drones will accept 128 gigabyte cards. So you can shoot for a really, really long time and you don't have to worry about changing the card. Okay, so now let's talk about the differences. If we talk about the differences between these two drones, it's the size of the sensor. So the Mavic 2 Zoom has a 1/2.3 inch sensor, just like the Mavic Pro, but the Mavic 2 Pro has a Hasselblad 1-inch CMOS sensor. So the Pro is gonna have a much better sensor than the Zoom. And for you photographers and cinematographers who shoot in low light, who want more dynamic range, you're gonna really appreciate the Mavic 2 Pro. It's also worth mentioning that the Mavic 2 Pro has 14 stops of dynamic range, and the Mavic 2 Zoom has 13 stops of dynamic range. You may be asking yourself, Brett, what are you talking about, dynamic range? What the heck does that mean? Well, in layman's terms, it's basically the ability to manipulate the shadows and the highlights. So anywhere where it's really overexposed, where it's very bright, and anywhere where it's very dark, you're gonna be able to change that in post. You're gonna be able to grade it. You're gonna be able to bring out the detail in the shadow and add more brightness or exposure to it. And then you're gonna be able to underexpose or bring down the highlights. So being able to do that in post is a huge advantage for a photographer or cinematographer who shoots in an area where there's a lot of contrast, or it's really bright in one area and it's really dark in another area. Because it will make your images and video just look much more professional and just overall look amazing and stand out from other footage. One thing I forgot to add about the sensors was for photographers, you're gonna really like the Pro because it's a 20 megapixel sensor. So not only do you have more resolution because it's a 1-inch sensor, it's much bigger, almost twice the size, but it also has 20 megapixels, whereas the smaller Zoom sensor has 12 megapixels. Now the focal length for the Mavic 2 Pro is 28 millimeters and it's a fixed focal length. And I think the Zoom has an advantage here because it goes all the way from 24 millimeters to 48 millimeters. So being able to zoom in and zoom out is going to give you much more creativity for cinematographers and much more versatility for photographers. So I think the Zoom has the edge here. Now usually prime lenses are better, so what that means is a fixed focal length or having a focal length like 28 millimeters that does not zoom in or zoom out. Usually the glass or quality of the image is going to be better, so the Pro might have better quality. However, being able to go wide to 24 millimeters is helpful. 28 to me was the same as the Mavic Pro, and it's not quite wide enough. I would have appreciated 24 a lot more because I do like to shoot that wide. And the Phantom 4 Pro shoots at 24 millimeters, which may be another reason they didn't make it 24 millimeters, because DJI still wanted to sell the Phantom 4 Pro version 2. So with all that said, the zoom does have that 24 to 48, which is great for cinematographers and people who want to be creative and vloggers. The 28 to me is not wide enough. However, the 28 millimeters will probably have less distortion and a little less vignetting, so it's going to be better image quality. So people who want the absolute best image quality get the Pro. It's a no-brainer. Now, another thing about the lenses is that the aperture on the Pro, you can go all the way from 2.8 to f11. So you can control that on the Pro. On the zoom, you can't control it. When you zoom in, it goes from 2.8 at 24 millimeters, and then when you zoom in all the way to 48, it goes to f3.8. Now that's kind of a bummer that you can't control the aperture, and that's the way it goes, all right? You can't have everything, but just letting you know, with the Pro, you do have a better advantage with the aperture, being able to control it and being able to go all the way from 2.8 to f11. And being able to shoot at f11, you can use a slower shutter, and you may not need to use ND filters as much as the zoom. So with the zoom, being able to shoot at f2.8 and 3.8, you're gonna let a lot of light in, so you're gonna probably wanna get an ND filter if you do buy the zoom. All right, another big difference is the color mode. They both shoot with the cine-like mode. However, the Pro has the D-Log mode. And for all you cinematographers out there who like to do a lot of post-production, change the colors, grade it, you can shoot super flat. They call it D-Log. That's basically like S-Log for Sony and some of the other logs for other brands. And basically log means it's gonna shoot the image with basically no colors, no highlights, no shadows. It's gonna be all pretty much the same. And then in post-production, you can change. You can add the colors, you can add the saturation or desaturation, and you can add in all the highlights and the shadows. Now, personally, I found cine-like is a happy medium. It's not like normal, it's not like log. It's in between. It has really great cinematic colors right out of the bat, especially with the skin tones. So I don't like to grade a ton in post, and I think you're gonna appreciate the cine-like mode, because if you use that with either drone, you won't have to do any editing in post. It's gonna look very cinematic and beautiful right out of the camera. Now, one last thing, in terms of cinematography and photography, the Mavic 2 Pro has 10-bit color depth. What that means is, unlike the Mavic Pro that had 8-bit, 10-bit color depth will give you more vibrancy, more variety of colors to use. The image quality is just going to be that much more accurate, that much more pleasing to the eye. And I think you're going to appreciate it both for photos and for video. Now, the zoom is still going to be great. It's just going to be that the Pro is going to be better. Now, being better, I just mean that the Pro is going to be better for image quality. For other features, the zoom is going to be better. So let's talk about one of those features, the Dolly Mode. Now, the Dolly Mode is a new intelligent flight mode that they added to the zoom. And what this is it's sort of like a parallax effect. So whenever you hear the word Dolly Mode or parallax effect, some people use the word vertigo effect, but I don't think that's accurate. Dolly Mode or a parallax effect is you'll be able to zoom in and zoom out, and the background of your image is gonna come towards you or go away from you as you move closer to the image or move away. So it's gonna create this weird effect like your background is almost moving while you're moving. So this effect is really great if you're shooting scenery of mountains, of tall buildings, anywhere where you have a lot of depth in your image between something really high and something really low. Having this parallax effect or this Dolly Mode effect is going to be great. And it used to be that you had to do this all in post-production, but now you can do it in this intelligent flight mode with just a click of the button. Now, because the Mavic 2 Pro doesn't zoom in or zoom out, you're not going to be able to get this Dolly Mode, but you have the other intelligent flight modes such as asteroid mode, such as droney, rocket, all these modes that you had before that you liked are also going to be in this drone. I've listed them right here. All right, so which one to choose? Which one should you go for? This is a tough decision because they're basically the same size. They look like the same exact drone, except when you see the head or the gimbal. If you're a photographer, hands down, I would get the Mavic 2 Pro. Now, if you're a cinematographer, it's really tough because having that zoom gives you a lot of flexibility. You also have 4 millimeters wider. You get the dolly effect or the parallax effect. So it's going to be a really, really tough call. But I think for a cinematographer, I would still, if you got the money, I would go for the Pro. However, using that parallax effect and being able to zoom in on an object or being able to get closer to an object without physically moving the drone closer is a huge advantage because it's less obtrusive. Both of these drones are very quiet, much quieter than the Mavic Pro. However, getting really close, you don't always want to have a wide angle. So having that zoom, you can shoot from a distance. This is going to be great for event photographers, cinematographers who shoot weddings and other things like that. I would get the zoom. But overall, if you want the best image quality and the best video quality, get the Mavic 2 Pro. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. Next week, I should do some more videos on the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel so you can get more videos about drones, the Mavic 2, and all the latest news, tips, tutorials. And don't forget to press that like button as well and share it with a friend. And remember, guys, siempre pa'lante, nunca para atrás.